I want to jump straight to the panel, which is going to be about innovation at global scale, something that TDK cares about all the time, and I know you entrepreneurs also. And this is why we call you King of the Hill, because we think you're going to become the king of the big market that's you want to address. So I would like to welcome Jim Tran, Michael Pocsatko, and Behrooz Abdi. So let's start with you, Jim. You have a long experience of innovation at global scale. So what does it mean to you?
For me, it's been a long journey and a lot of learning. But I think for me at TDK, the fortunate thing being at TDK is I get to see, at my position, I get to see all the great things that we do internally, all the technologies from around the world. We work, of course, very closely with our R&D teams in the US, but also with the teams in Japan and also in Europe as well. I get to see everything that goes on and to be able to take those different technologies and see what we could do with them. That's what kind of inspires me. So I'm a systems guy by training, and also through my career, I've always dealt with big systems and whatnot. So my job is to help TDK kind of move up the stack, to think about the problems, how to solve it with a systems viewpoint. And in fact, the Americas R&D team, our focus is on software as one of the new pillars. But as I always tell people, the software has to run on some system. So we think of ourselves as trying to drive new systems and software. So trying to combine all the different technologies to build something new that can make it, to intercept a new growth vector and to drive new, to solve new problems, basically.
And you're building a great track record of doing it organically and inorganically.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we realize that even though we have great fundamental technologies, because we have material science, processes, and now we're putting the systems and software together, we don't always have everything. We don't have all the ingredients. And working with teams like yourself to identify what's out there helps us to understand, okay, we're missing this piece. Let's bring that in to make the complete picture. Yeah.
Thank you. Michael, you've lived in China, in Japan, many places. What does it mean for you, innovation at global scale?
Yeah, I think if you start just with the basics, our boss always talks about TDK United. Yeah. And I think that if we observe what happened here over the last 2 days, I don't think that we leave any impression that we are not global. We are a global company, and you could see that the panels, you could see that the speakers, you could see the examples never originate on one single place, but they are the result of the connections. And one thing that was mentioned just the session before, vision, courage, trust. I think that is being lived by this company. So how can innovation be any different? Yeah. So to answer your question to a point, it's a very natural thing within TDK to innovate at a global scale. How it is then implemented and the details and how the processes are, this is another thing. But the aim, the history, and the management top-down, the direction that they give us, and how they live it is exactly global TDK United.
Very nice. Behrooz, you were the CEO of InventSense when I joined InventSense. You were my big boss, all about innovation and working with the ecosystem. I would want to know how you define it.
Well, I live today. I live in this multiverse of working with a big company with TDK as well as startup, investor, board members. So I kind of see it from multiple filters, multiple universes. And it's hard for me to see, no matter what I'm doing, it's hard for me to see innovation without execution. When I look at innovation, I always push the execution button harder than the innovation button because I know it forces a team to go innovate more, ironically. So it's a kind of a paradoxical, but I see that in every startup. I see it within TDK. I like to see it more in TDK. And I think, as Jim mentioned, the way TDK does things these days has changed, moving towards a system and really stitching things together to execute faster. And that's where a lot of the startups come in at a global scale. When we joined TDK, I was telling people, and I still say to people, it's like going to grandma's house, 80-year-old house. You go up in the attic and you pull the cabinets and it's filled with treasures. It's filled with all kinds of technologies and not all of them connected to each other. You see a beautiful portrait, you see jewelry, you see diamonds, and finding ways to stitch it together to create something really much more meaningful is what innovation and the corporate ventures and the work that we're now doing these days with spinning in, spinning out. That's really what it means. It's really getting to that execute on innovation faster within the TDK, and it is global, but it's also very much execution focused.
Actually, you make me think of a question which is about how much TDK is changing. So maybe I'll start with Michael, then Behrooz, and Jim in the order of how long you've been in TDK. Michael, how do you see TDK changing? Because for our portfolio companies, they think it's TDK as of today has been always the same, but there's quite some changes.
Yeah, I think that my way of observing how TDK changes is not to look into a quarter by quarter evaluation, but when you start looking back 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I'm with TDK now since 2008. I see enormous changes. Yeah, I don't know if I should say this, but I remember that the first meetings I had with the CEO and executive committee, very much at the beginning of my engagement with TDK, all the meetings in Japan were in Japanese. Only the CEO was making a speech. There were no memos of the meeting. Okay, and there were some translators behind you translating to the few non-Japanese managers what was going on. Today, TDK is an organization which on that level and all the other levels, I would say 99% of the meetings are in English. We have agendas in English, we have memos in English, and I can guarantee you that on all levels, whether it's a board meeting or an executive committee meeting or any other meeting, quarterly management meeting, there is very strong engagement from all participants, agreements, disagreements. So, if you consider that, and that happened in a relatively short period of time, keep looking back 3 years, 2 years, and you see the changes.
Very nice. Behrooz?
Yeah, by the way, I have some stories about the translation, and there's a lot of stories there. But yeah, TDK has really truly transformed, in the last 4 or 5 years. And again, when we joined TDK from InventSense, I always felt to use Jim's point about material science, very, very strong material science, or to see Hashiyama-san's picture, the ferrite tree. It really is pretty profound. And over the last few years, moving up to the system and now AI, if you look at what the company's done with Sensei, which is bringing an AI company from outside, small company AI tools, and really use it as a seed to stitch those technologies that I was talking about and pull them together. Same thing, we recently, the acquisition of SoftEye, really things like that bring in innovation from outside, use them as a seed, put things around it. And really, truly, TDK is a very unique company in terms of from atom to AI. And it just has a lot of assets, and I really encourage the startups here to utilize that. And I know that'll be the subject of the next discussions.
So I'm the youngest alum here, so I've been here only 4 years, but it seems like 10.
So I've seen
a good
way.
Yeah, in a good way. In a good way. I think I've witnessed a lot of change since joining. So this is my second boss, second CEO. So the changes I've seen is I think TDK is now very much willing to move up that stack to really try new things. I think that's the one thing. I knew TDK because of my Qualcomm interaction with TDK with the RF360. And I think that time and this time is very different. I think the more nimble, I would say, willingness to try different things, especially moving up the system. Obviously, with the recent forming of TDK Sensei, and now doing the AR glasses with the soft eye. So yeah, I think big changes within the last 4 years. I mean, from an R&D perspective, which is one of my other jobs, when I first joined, North America had 3 projects. I have 14 now.
1-4.
1-4.
Wow.
Yeah. So very big changes.
Now, we can't talk about innovation without culture. And I'll start with you, Jim. How do you get the right culture for innovation, where you can do some risk, but it's calculated, it's thoughtful? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I think for me, there is big cultural differences, especially from where I came from. I came from traditional Silicon Valley companies. And like TDK, obviously, about to be 90 years old this December, we're going to turn 90. So lots of traditional Japanese roots. So things are definitely going to be different. But I think one of the things for innovation, for me, is to kind of understand each other, to speak the same language. Because TDK is a global company, a big European team, big North American, big Asian teams. So we all speak different languages, literally, but also in terms of how we think about innovation. This thing about jobs to be done is kind of like to get people. I think all of us at this level have gone through different trainings through our life. And it's pretty much all the same thing, except it's all, served to you differently. And because of that, we all speak differently in terms of innovation. So I think finding a common language is really important.
Common language. Michael, you're driving some of the internal ventures teams to build this kind of internal startups. How do you think about the culture to make it happen?
It's another example of how fast TDK is transforming, because the corporate marketing incubation headquarter is the youngest one of all the headquarter functions. You are even a little bit older than corporate marketing incubation. I think that it is a proof of the willingness of the company to change, to transform, as Behrooz mentioned. I also believe that experimenting, exploring new ideas, and implementing a system of transformation in the company by having internal startups and having internal incubation activities is something very unique, because it really, we don't have a big division, we don't have a big opportunity, a factory and organization, but we have young people in the company who are willing to jump on new ideas. And I was mentioning this yesterday in a conversation with one of our portfolio representatives here. It's amazing to see how many young people in TDK have new business ideas, especially in the area of sustainability and exploring new ideas in regards to products which help society. It's something that I personally even underestimated. So what I try to say is, I don't talk so much about the cultural changes within the TDK organization. I see a common culture, also driven by management, to respect everybody in the organization, to respect every type of idea. And it's completely independent whether you are a high-ranking corporate officer like Jim, or you work in a team and you have a great idea. The CEO will listen to you. Yeah? And I think that is something that once implemented top-down, everybody lives it bottom-up. And that, at the end of the day, is very fundamental for people to be less afraid of risk, try to innovate, try to jump into the cold water, as I say, and be willing, like all our portfolio managers, CEOs, CTOs here with us today, to try something new under the umbrella of an organization like TDK.
Actually, can you talk about one thing which I thought was so interesting? One of your team was the very first team in 87 years to take payments by credit card.
Yeah, the first the first startup which we created, which is Damperflux, which is a startup which offers EMC based or EMC services using AI. Was the first entity in TDK in this period of time taking payments from customers, from smaller customers and medium-sized customers via credit card. And yes, it took us 2 months to implement the TDK. Certainly under other circumstances it would have been easier, but we have certain regulations that we need to respect as a company with 100,000 plus people, and we want to make sure everything is compliant, tax compliant, and so on and so on. You could give up, or you could just go through it. And with the culture that we have, people found a solution, and we took the credit card payments.
Yep. So Behrooz, you have this vantage point of being an entrepreneur on top of working, driving very big companies. Can you give some ideas about the culture of innovation in TDK from the entrepreneur's vantage point?
Yeah, I think a lot of the discussions that Jim and Michael had, it really is right on in terms of how do you change a culture of, and drive that innovation. It does come to whether it's incentives, whether it's how you really motivate people to take risk and fail faster. I mean, all that, to me, it really comes back to that, execution button. All the startups here, I'm sure when they go back to their offices, they're all, unless you raise so much money that you're never looking to raise any more for the next 10 years, everybody measures their progress with the metrics of cash flow. How much cash do I have? Can I take off before I run out of the runway? And that forces you to innovate, not just in a technology, which of course you got to do it, but innovate in different ways of running the business, whether it's, getting the team to do different payments, get creative about how you deal with customers, get creative about how you raise money, get creative about how you run your organization. Those are things that it's embedded in the startups, and getting that into TDK, I think that what really comes through with the interactions through CVC, dealing with the startups, because that's how TDK can change a culture, is how do you do this faster? How do you do it faster? Again, it's not just all about the money. It's whatever your purpose is as a startup or as an organization trying to innovate. If you don't innovate fast enough, you become irrelevant. I mean, there's a shelf life to innovation, and if what you're innovating in 4 years from now, if you're still innovating and it's not going anywhere, you're either irrelevant or commodity. And that, to me, is the thing that you got to measure. And that's what we always, in a large company, it's harder to change that culture, but it is happening. I do see the transformation, and a lot of it is from the different ways of that the company's running now and transforming.
Now, I think one thing we're maybe not saying is TDK is not just a big company that's soon 19 years old. Actually, there are 2 teams here in the audience who are actually real startups that Jim kind of catalyzed into being. So when you engage with some of the teams, they are real startups.
That's true.
So can you share a little bit about both and how you think about it?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the TDK Sensei team. Just those who don't know, it's Sensor Edge Intelligence, a play on words, Sensei for teacher in Japanese. That actually, there were already kind of, the building blocks of that team within TDK. Actually, one of the fundamental building blocks belong to Mr. Pocsatko here. So they made the sensor device using our sensors to try to monitor the health of machines in the factory.
But we were reaching the end of the road,
yeah.
And without you and...
One of the things we were trying to identify was, okay, how this is really good because we have a lot of factories, but for those who aren't in the manufacturing, when the machine goes down, it's a big deal, right? Your downtime is measured, and it's a really big problem. And the issue is when a technician goes to the machine when it's down, you have to know immediately, okay, what's the diagnosis? What's going on? Is it a ball bearing problem, a belt, whatever it is, right? And they have to fix it right away. But his team had an initial idea of putting a sensor, figuring out, okay, as soon as it goes down, condition-based monitoring, we call it, what happened, The issue is the AI behind it, right? At the time, we had one AI model, It's one of those
Which
hammer
was
looking
machine
for.
learning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was not easy to scale. So the question was, how do you scale that? And a little bit of serendipity, we found a company that actually looked at this problem and had a tool that allowed you, basically anybody in this room probably, to be able to click on a button, collect the data, and basically generate the model needed for, depending on accuracy, latency, whatever you want, based on those KPIs. And you just say, okay, that's the one I want. And then it generated the C code, and then you download that, and you compiled it, and off to the races, and you can do the proof of concept. So that was the scaling thing. It was really what was solving the scaling issue. And so that was one example of taking the stuff we already had and then finding something from the outside to really make it into a scalable, sustainable business.
But I also think what is important, that's where the culture is. When he and Joe came with this idea, we immediately understood the advantage and the value in moving up, which was obvious. All of you would say it's obvious, but nobody said, "Oh, it's mine, it's mine." Well, how do I make it? No, the issue was, okay, how do we move it to the next level? And I think that cooperation on this level made it also easier for the team who was affected, because there were several managers, and Choi-san, who is here and managed this team, helped very much to bridge the culture between, the US AI team and the Japanese hardware team to come together and create something new, and then we could strengthen it from there. Yeah.
That team has, in less than a year and a half, I think it's like 120 people now.
Wow.
It's grown it's
I
global.
actually didn't even know it was 120.
It's global now.
Yeah.
We got sites in China, Singapore, US,
More importantly,
Japan.
paying customers.
And customers as well.
Very nice. I want to ask you, Michael, about combining internal ventures initiatives for organic growth and the next pillar. How do you see this into this puzzle matching in a way?
Yeah, the next pillar, which is the big next thing that we want to create, it is very important that we cooperate on all the different levels. One of the ideas is to represent those opportunities, because your team and my team have identification of megatrends, and we believe that those megatrends should be better understood all over the headquarter functionality and also the business companies, so that we represent where TDK is in regards to those megatrends and how it affects, how it relates to our technologies. So I think it's going to be the next step to pinpoint more and to create new activities, whether it is in the business companies or whether it is like the new ideas that Jim represented, or the other ones which are popping up. It's going to be a catalyst for accelerating transformative growth in the company. And I think that's going to be together with other colleagues here, a big step to tackle that and to move it.
Very nice. I want to maybe go towards the advice to our audience, the TDK team members as well as the entrepreneurs, and it's probably a different advice, but what advice would you give to them about leveraging TDK Ventures for their benefits to innovate faster?
I can start. So I think TDK Ventures can help you bridge the gap, like whether you need to have an expert, because we have a broad set of skills now, right, inside the company, being 90 years old, and finding somebody in the company that could help you solve the problem. Previously, there was an example of that. And also, I think to be able to look at inside TDK because we are also looking for solutions to help the things that we want to do. So I think that bridge. So when it comes to like sort of the portfolio companies, and how I like to see it is, I always look for synergies. Everything that you guys are looking at, I'm always asking within our R&D confines, can I synergize this? Either, of course, because of my background looking at the R&D, but also globally for the TK businesses, can we use this in some other fashion? I think we've been finding quite a few recently. So I look forward to more of that.
I think we're getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, like I said, TDK has so many assets, again, from Atom to AI. So typically, traditionally, we always look at TDK as, the synergy is I can use TDK components. And it's just so much more than that, the material science. And now the new TDK, even the stuff that's happening with Sensei, soon, hopefully more and more, you'll hear more about the AR glass, things like that. There are just so many different assets that are, the sensors. There's so many different things. I would look at really broader TDK. And as a startup, I would really ask more questions about what else do you have and where do you have it in the company? Can I get access to it? I mean, batteries is a great example, but again, the battery technology at TDK is so deep. It's not just like, well, maybe I can just use your batteries. No, what are you doing in battery innovation? Energy. I wouldn't say battery and energy innovation. What are you doing in sensor innovation? What are you doing out of that ferrite tree? What other things you're doing? Ferrite, ceramics. It's just a ton of things that TDK is doing. And then, of course, the relationship. TDK has just a phenomenal brand name. Who are you connected from TDK to? Which companies? I need to get to this company. Do you have connections? So really, I would look at the big picture of TDK and everything that it can bring to you.
Maybe I just see it as you're now a member of the club. And TDK Ventures can open the door and access everything that's on the ferrite tree. That's how I see it.
Very nice. And back to the HMSN vision of the sunshine onto the ferrite tree.
Yes.
Now, my last question is going to be about global scale. How do you, maybe you advise both to TDK team members, but also the portfolio companies, which is how can we be more ambitious to be global scale in terms of impact?
In terms of the global, boy, that's fairly broad.
Especially with this morning, we talked about all the challenges that comes from geopolitics and politics.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is one where you probably have some kind of, how do you call it, compass that could be helpful.
I mean, that's really the other place. I'm actually glad you brought it up because that's the other place TDK has, again, a lot of connections, and they're obviously watching the geopolitics, watching all kinds of regulation that changes by the day in every country, not just here, monitoring that, being able to have that connection. Because again, as a startup, they're just really hard for you to keep up. And so finding out what are the different ways that you can operate in the new world with TDK and, outside of TDK, that's really important. And get access to those type of resources. I mean, I do all the time and, reach out to the folks within TDK and say, hey, what does this new regulation mean to transporting product across the border here, there, and really get a lot of help from that. So, I mean, that's a resource. Unfortunately, maybe that's where CVC can actually provide more of a resource to the organization as far as, and maybe already do. It's like, hey, here's the kind of a governance team that can advise you on all the regulations and governance, or at least connect you as a startup to those.
Which actually is a good segue to Jim, because Jim is beefing up regulatory teams to understand more what's happening and the trade and all of that.
Yeah, in the U.S., of course, because it's I think, we are beefing up some of these, government affairs, activities to engage with what's going on with the administration and whatnot. But it's ever moving, right? So, but we do have people now that are constantly monitoring and offering, the local advice of what's happening. But I think it's not just local, right? We have experts like Joe in China, my counterpart in China, doing the same thing. So we kind of bring all that together to help. The other thing I want to say about this global scale, as our teams, our innovation teams and our R&D teams look at solutions, we always ask that question. Is this a local solution, or can you scale this? And maybe you can't do it day one. What is the path to that? We're always thinking about that playbook. How do you take it, even if it starts out as a localized, whether it's regional or a specific problem, how do you grow it to something bigger, and whether it's global or not? I think we always ask that question, and sometimes we don't have the answer right away. But it's still important to ask that question to figure out how you're going to get that answer.
I liked earlier the panel when Arun explained that if you can make it work in India with the price sensitivity, the road conditions, and all of that, you're going to make it everywhere. So I think the blueprint and how is it regional or can it go global is really a good question to ask up front. Michael, you may have the last comment.
Honestly, I think that looking into the future and listening very carefully to the interactions here during the panel discussions and also everything that we are showing downstairs, it already shows that TDK is expanding its reach. The question of globality is not an issue. It's more an issue of how you act in the environment in which you are. And quite frankly, if I see the kind of interactions that everybody from management has up to our board over the last 3 years also, and I see the kind of quality of the interactions that we have, it becomes very obvious that when you go to a party, you still talk about the TDK cassette. But when you start going into the details and you see the ferrite tree, people are acknowledging us that we are an essential part of whatever kind of direction the industry is taking, and we are there.
In everything, better.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.